We don't like journalists. Nobody likes journalists, right? They're not people. They're not. However, they should still have the exact same rights as everybody else. Suella Braverman marshals Tory peers against Charlotte's Law after LBC reporters arrest covering eco protest. Suella Braverman has ordered Conservative peers to vote against a new law seeking to bolster the rights of journalists covering protests following the arrest of LBC's Charlotte Lynch in November of 2022. Despite being in possession of her press card and an LBC branded microphone, Charlotte was approached by two officers responding to a Just Stop Oil protest on the M25 who arrested her on suspicion of conspiracy to commit public nuisance. Handcuffed and with all of her equipment seized, she was taken to Stevenage Police Station in the back of a Hertfordshire constabulary van. There, with tears running down her face, she was ushered into a police cell where she remained for the next 5 hours. Recalling the incident on LBC the next day, Charlotte admitted that she was absolutely terrified throughout the ordeal. Being arrested isn't that bad. It's fine. You can sometimes have a wee chat with the officers. Or you can be like me, where you're giving them absolute pelters the entire drive to the police station, where they end up pulling up at the side of the road and knocking fuck out you in the back. Yeah, that happened to me. Looking back in the things I was saying to him, I deserved it. I was I was saying some shit while Hertfordshire Police eventually conceded that she had been wrongfully arrested. Her case sparked significant concerns surrounding press freedom, with the Prime Minister's spokesperson stressing it is vital journalists are able to do their job freely without restriction. When it comes to the speech laws, the journalists will be the very last thing to go. They'll be the very last thing to go. Because journalists are the ones that should be able to blow the whistle about this type of stuff, but when they're like, no, these big bad racist Nazis, these right wingers, I like it when the right wingers are illegal. It's good. I like it. Basically, but if they start complaining about freedom of speech, that's when it starts pouring into the mainstream. You know, your general Bill the Bricky, who only reads the paper like once a week, that's when he starts hearing about it. Like, so journalists are the ones that could toot the horn the loudest when it comes to free speech abuses, but they don't, and the government knows this. So what they will do with the journalists is they will leave them to the very last. Once they've got everybody else, then they'll get the journalists. To this end, a coalition of opposition and crossbench peers tabled an amendment to the government's controversial public order bill, led by Labour peer and former Shadow Attorney General Baroness Chakrabarti. Dubbed Charlotte's Law, Clause 18 was drafted to protect journalists, legal observers, academics, and bystanders who observe or report on protests or the police's use of powers related to protests. Yet, as peers prepare to vote on the measure this evening, sources have revealed to LBC that the Home Secretary is marshalling Conservatives in the upper chamber to reject the amendment's introduction, meaning it is expected to be the latest in a series of heavily contested disputes over the public order bill. Now, one thing that I point out all the time is how modern leftists don't give the tiniest shit about freedom of speech. See, back when the right wing was essentially being made illegal, they absolutely loved that shit because they can't win in an actual fight, so they kind of need to ban the other side from being able to fight because their ideas are just that bad that they don't hold up to scrutiny at all. So they wanted to ban people from pointing out how bad their ideas were because instead of doing things the honest way and allowing the actual good ideas to succeed, they wanted to bring their ideas in through force and through fascistic control of the flow of information. However, now the left wingers, just like we said, boys, isn't it weird how the things that we all predicted are coming true? They're now getting their speech attacked, and now they're starting to be nervous with the things with the protests and the speech and journalists being arrested and stuff like that. Now they are starting to get nervous. However, I don't think it's too late, if they drop all this, and hate speech isn't free speech, actually, like that bullshit, if they start to drop that and actually, you know, properly start to defend freedom of speech, maybe there's still hope. Labour's Lord Falconer said, Charlotte's experience, she was not alone. There were two other journalists on the day. There have been other journalists who have been arrested in the last year. It is absolutely obvious that even if the law protects journalists at the moment, the police just ignore that. And that's a very important point. Yeah, for example, there are certain human rights laws that are supposed to protect us, and police ignore those all the fucking time. They do not care. The police do not care about that at all. What's more, after Charlotte was arrested, the PCC, the Police and Crime Commissioner from Hertfordshire, justified the arrest by saying, well, the journalists being there incite the protesters by filming them. What an interesting argument. Journalists being there and filming the protesters only incite them further. That is, I've got a feeling that we are going to be hearing a lot of that argument in the future. Oh, by journalists being there and filming what we're doing to the protesters, it's actually making the protest worse. So we have to remove everyone with a video camera documenting everything we're doing. Interesting. It's an absolutely outrage. See the amount of spelling mistakes in these fucking articles. No, I think it's meant to say it's an absolute outrage. It's an absolute outrage. The minister's answer, I haven't watched that in a long time. The minister's answer, namely, don't you worry, things are okay, the law's fine, is absolutely nonsense. He feared without the amendment passing, police will be uninhibited from detaining journalists. Just last week, the government sustained 2 narrow defeats on the bill in the House of Lords, with an amendment attempting to prevent protests on an issue of current debate being struck down by a mere 3 votes, 221 versus 224. With the amendments passing in doubt, Baroness Chakrabarti told LBC that she laments Miss Braverman's decision to oppose Charlotte's law. Free and open reporting matters. It matters whatever people's views on protests that they support or detest, she said. For the Home Secretary to double down and reject cross-party attempts to protect those who report on demonstrations is a dark day for democracy and a new low for this totally dysfunctional excuse for a government. That's all governments. I urge all peers to vote for this new provision in honour of LBC's Charlotte Lynch and all journalists wrongfully arrested, detained and bullied just for doing their vital work. Asked whether Miss Braverman would be supporting Baroness Chakrabarti's proposals, a Home Office spokesperson said the Public Order Bill will give the police the powers they need to prevent and respond to guerrilla tactics that cause misery to the hard-working public. No, it's to shut down protest. The entire point of a protest was so that you are able to air grievances to the government, institutions, etc., etc. That's the entire point of it. However, when countries are constantly having a lot of protests around the world, that makes it look like the country's in the shitter. Things are going very badly. People see it on TV and they think, what's coming to this country? Why we even fight a war? Like, that type of stuff, right? However, if there's no protests, shit, things must be great. Things must be brilliant. I mean, if things were really bad, people would be out protesting, wouldn't they? Like in China, in places, or North Korea. They don't have protests because they have laws like this. Freedom of the press is a cornerstone of our democracy, and there are already safeguards under current legislation which can ensure that journalists are protected when reporting on protests. I love it when people turn around and say these things like, it's a cornerstone of our democracy, and freedom of speech is very important. However, and then they say a bunch of stuff that completely contradicts everything they just said. They do that all the fucking time, but then again, that's the problem with authoritarians. They tell such obvious lies, and they know they're lying, and they know that you know they're lying, but they keep saying it anyway. It's like, I've rewatched Breaking Bad recently. Do you remember when Skylar's sister stole that wee tiara? And then Skylar tried to take it back to the shop, and then it turned out it was stolen, and Skylar almost got arrested and stuff like that, and then she confronted her sister. And even though her sister was caught absolute dead bang to rights, completely, irrefutable evidence it was completely her, yet she still tried to lie her way through it. She just tried to deny reality and just substitute her own bullshit, and then got mad that her nonsense reality wasn't being accepted by anyone. That's how governments work.